Let's be honest, you're drowning. We all are, right? At work, at home, even in our own heads. You stay late, you wake up early, you give up your weekends, and you are still behind. It really feels like there are only two choices. Keep grinding until you completely break, or just give up and walk away. Burn out or surrender.
But what if there was a third way? I'm not talking about some modern productivity hack, but a really profound piece of wisdom from a 2,000-year-old Jewish text. It's designed for anyone who has ever felt totally and completely overwhelmed. And the core idea is this: you can't finish, but you also can't quit.
Think about that. 2,000 years ago, a sage, a man who watched his entire world literally burn to the ground, delivered this radical teaching. And here's the key. It's not a contradiction. It's the design. And to really get it, we first have to look at his brutally honest assessment of our lives.
Okay, so let's dive in. Rabbi Tarfon doesn't start with a comforting pat on the back. Nope. He starts with a cold, hard look at reality. He lays it all out in a section of the Mishnah called Pirkei Avos, or Ethics of Our Fathers. It's this classic collection of Jewish wisdom about how to live a meaningful life.
So who was this guy, Rabbi Tarfon? He was a Kohen, a priest who actually served in the Second Temple in Jerusalem. This was a man who literally heard the sacred name of God spoken in the holiest place on earth, and then he watched that very same place get smashed into rubble. So believe me, when he talks about a short day and a pressing master, he is not speaking theoretically.
So here's how the Jewish commentators break this down. Bartenura, a classic commentator, explains that the day is short doesn't just mean from sunrise to sunset. It means your entire life in this world is just one short day. The work, studying and living the Torah, is infinite. And us? Well, we're the workers. And let's face it, we are naturally kind of lazy. And yet, the spiritual reward is absolutely huge, and the Master, God, isn't lowering his expectations for us. Okay, so that 5-point audit, it sounds completely crushing, doesn't it? It's basically a recipe for despair. You've got infinite work, finite time, and a really demanding boss. But right after painting this impossible picture, Rabbi Tarfon gives us the most astonishing release you can imagine. It is not incumbent upon you to finish the task, but neither are you free to desist from it. Just let that sink in for a second. He just told us the master's pressing and the day is short, and now he says we don't have to finish? I mean, that sounds like a complete contradiction. And this right here is the central puzzle. The great sage, known as the Maharal of Prague, asks this exact question. How can these two statements possibly be true at the same time? Seriously, what kind of boss demands total urgency but doesn't actually require you to complete the project? And the Maharal's answer is just profound. He says the task was never meant to be completed. It's infinite by design. God gave human beings a task that is intentionally bigger than any single life so that no one could ever stand up and say, I'm done. You see, the point isn't completion. The point is transformation. And this is the core tension we have to live with. You have to work with the passion and the drive of someone who is trying to finish, even while knowing that you can't. It's about maximum effort without the crushing expectation of a final result. But, and the Maharal is very clear about this is not an excuse for laziness. The permission to not finish is only granted to the person who is urgently engaged in the work. Now, for Rabbi Tarfon, this wasn't just some abstract philosophical idea. To see how we actually lived this tension, we have to turn to this incredible, dramatic story from the Talmud. So the story goes, it takes place in an orchard. Rabbi Tarfon, who was a man of great wealth and stature, was eating some figs he thought were ownerless, which would mean they were permissible to take. But the owner, who'd been having a real problem with thieves, saw him from a distance, didn't recognize him, and just assumed the worst. The landowner was furious. He grabs the great sage, stuffs him into a rough burlap sack, and starts carrying him to the river, with every intention of throwing him in to drown. I mean, the situation was absolutely dire. Just as he's about to be tossed into the water, Rabbi Tarfon cries out, revealing his famous name. The second the landowner heard Tarfon, he realized he was about to kill one of the greatest sages in all of Israel. He immediately dropped the sack and fled in terror. So Rabbi Tarfon was saved. But get this, he spent the rest of his life in anguish over it. Why? Because he felt he had used the crown of Torah, that core principle that you shouldn't use your religious status for personal gain, even to save his own life. The Talmud explains that since he was enormously wealthy, he should have just offered the guy money instead. That was the unbelievable standard he held himself to. But all that intensity was balanced by this deep understanding of what true value is. There's this other story where his colleague, the famous Rabbi Akiva, asked him for 4,000 gold coins to invest in some durable goods. Rabbi Tarfon, who was always generous, just gave him the money. Rabbi Akiva immediately gave it all away to poor Torah scholars. When Rabbi Tarfon later asked to see his new properties, Rabbi Akiva just showed him a verse in Psalms, "His righteousness endures forever." He explained that charity was the only truly durable investment, and Rabbi Tarfon kissed him and called him his teacher.
So after all of this, the pressure, the paradox, the intense personal standard, how do we actually resolve it all? Well, the answer is right there in the final lines of the Mishnah, and it all comes down to trust. Your employer is trustworthy to pay you the reward of your labor, and know that the giving of reward to the righteous is in the world to come. That's it. That's the ultimate answer. You just have to trust. You don't have to see the results. You don't have to measure your output. You just have to trust that the employer, God, is going to keep his promise, and that the real reward isn't even meant for this world anyway. So here's the final takeaway, the bottom line. God measures your effort, not your output. Your sincerity matters so much more than your volume. The person who studies for just 1 hour with their whole heart can be on the same level as a genius who masters volumes of text. You just have to trust that the work itself is building something meaningful, even if you can't see the final product. And this brings us right back to where we started. This ancient wisdom completely rejects both modern burnout culture, that whole idea of pushing until you break, and that cynical resignation that says nothing matters anyway. It offers a third path, whether you're a parent, an artist, or building a career, to be fully engaged in your work without being crushed by the weight of it. You show up, you give it your all, and you humbly accept that you will not see the finish line. So, I'll just leave you with this question. In our world, which is so obsessed with metrics and measurable outcomes, what if Rabbi Tarfon is telling us that the point was never the outcome at all? What if the real reward is the person you become while working on a task you know you can't finish, but you refuse to abandon?
This explainer is dedicated Louis Nishmas Ara Shmuel ben Chaim Tzvi Hirsch, A.J. Jacobson, of blessed memory. May the merit of this Torah learning bring an elevation to his soul.